Ladies and gentlemen, come gather around, come gather around, come gather around. It's the ignition system, part 2, where we learn about spark advance. If you have not seen ignition system part 1, clickety-click on the link over there and check it out. It shows you how we get spark and what makes it happen. This one is about spark advance. It's probably going to be a shorter video. I don't really know. I just start talking until someone says shut up, and then hopefully I got done in time. Ladies and gentlemen, spark timing. So far we covered how the engine works, where air and fuel will be drawn into the intake. When the piston goes down, it's compressed, we ignite it, driving the piston back down with combustion force, and then pushing all the exhaust out. Suck, squeeze, bang, blow. We talked about the fuel system, where we can get fuel into the airstream, or we inject fuel into the airstream, or with that modern fangled stuff, we can squirt fuel into the combustion chamber, black magic and voodoo. And we talked about the ignition system in creating a spark so that we can ignite the air fuel when we only have a 12 volt battery, but we need like 25. Holy crap, looks like we just blew the piston. Clearly you over-revved your Honda Civic. Other than stuffing more physical air into an engine, spark advance is probably the most important thing for power on your vehicle that you can mess with. But what about a camshaft, Mr. Wellwood? Camshaft affects the air going into the engine. Anything affecting the air in there definitely is going to make power. Whether you change things in the motor so that it breathes better, or you just frickin' stuff air in there, really the tune comes down to the spark and the fuel mixture. We talked about fuel mixture, today we're talking about spark. When you're talking spark advance, time is what it's all about. And while time might keep on slipping into the future, you need to make sure things start soon enough so that they can get going at the same time. When you were a kid, you were probably oblivious to time. Time was irrelevant. Time didn't matter. If you had 2 minutes to play, by golly, you would use all of those 2 minutes to play. But when you're really little, with no concept of time, your parents would get after you because, look, you have to get your shoes on. You got to get your jacket on. We got to get you in the car. We got to bring your diaper bag and your change of clothes for reasons I'd rather not get into. And we need all that stuff so that we can leave in time to get there on time. And some people are oblivious to time, and it's like, whatever. I like going to the movie and actually seeing the previews. Some people don't even mind being 10 minutes late for a movie. I don't understand those people at all. When you go camping, to me, camping on a scale of 1 to 10 hovers around nope to forget about it. I love camping as long as it comes with free wireless, endless hot water, covered parking, room service, cable TV, and air conditioning. That is camping that I can get behind. But some of you guys probably go camping. Who here loves going camping? Wow, has this been changing the whole time? For you guys who go camping, how long does it typically take you to start a campfire? You don't go camping? No. How about you? About 5 minutes. You? Oh, 2 minutes if I'm being chased by a bear. Okay. So you need to start cooking the campfire. You got to start the campfire, so you got a roaring hot campfire, so you can cook the food. So if this is where I want to start cooking, this is where you need to start that fire going. Because without the fire, I can't cook the food. And we need to cook the food because it takes a certain amount of time for that food to cook, especially if it's chicken, before you can eat it. Blah. Or that, okay? So time matters. You got to start a fire so that we can cook it so we don't die of dysentery in our Oregon Express. If we check out our engine down here, what you don't see is I'm moving it with my mind. Oh yeah, I always knew you were strange. People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Now, when we covered the engine and the piston was coming down for the power stroke, you guys kind of probably assumed that the spark happened exactly at top dead center. The piston is top dead center of its rotation, and then we'd spark and everything would happen. Reality is not like that at all. Because things move so fast, when this engine is running at idle, it's spinning 10 times in a second. So you're going 1001, it just spun 10 times. That's fairly significant. Because things are going fairly fast, we got to be prepared for that. If we spark right at the beginning, this piston's going to be already heading down the hole by the time that fire happens. It's not an explosion, it's a controlled but rapid combustion. And we want it to combust because it's a decent kind of force on the piston. If this thing were to ignite right at the top and start to burn, and this piston's already heading down, by the time that combustion builds up maximum force, it's really going to be chasing this piston down the hole. That's not going to work for us. If we fired it right here and it was instant combustion, it would just try to compress that connecting rod and not try to rotate. We need to have that combustion happening as the throw of the crankshaft comes over, so we have some leverage here, so we can lever it and get some torque out of this motor. But because things happen and things take time, what we have to do, backing it up a little bit further, we want to ignite the air and fuel as the piston's coming up. It's not going to hurt anything. It starts to burn, it builds maximum power, and at maximum power, this thing is over enough that it will start to drive the piston down the hole. For most engines at idle speed, we're going to do it kind of like this. If we want the piston to come down from top dead center, it's going to come down and then come back up again. We usually want to start the spark on most engines in the ballpark of 10 degrees of rotation before top dead center. That usually gives us enough lead time to get the spark going. It starts to burn, it builds up pressure. I don't want pressure right here or I'll compress the connecting rod. I do want pressure somewhere over here. I don't know, there's usually a typical number, but let's say it's going to be in the neighborhood of maybe 10 or 15 degrees after top dead center, where we have max cylinder pressure driving this thing down. And it'll run and it'll have idle and it'll be okay until we drive it faster. Because if now, let's say I'm at 6,000 RPM and this thing is spinning at, what would that be, 100 times per second? I don't know, do the math. This ain't math. This thing's going to be just zinging, which means if I do light it at 10 degrees before, this piston is long gone by the time we're actually making maximum cylinder pressure. So I need to start firing this earlier and earlier and earlier. So maybe at idle I'm firing it here. If I'm at the red line, I might need to be firing it there because the flame keeps going. It's kind of like two things are happening at two speeds. Like, you ever notice how bugs move so fast, but you can't catch them? They probably look at us like we're a lumbering oaf going in completely slow motion. Ow! I hurt my elbow.
Did you hear that? He said it!
So if I go faster and faster and faster and faster with engine speed, this has to be moved further and further and further advanced. So this would be 10 degrees before top dead center. And it depends on the engine. Some engines have really good combustion and you don't have to advance it a lot. On the old school Chevy V8 that I have in my daily driving Silverado, I have this thing running at about 35 degrees before top dead center when I'm cruising on the highway at 3,000 RPM. If I have less timing, I'm going to make less power because the fire is chasing the piston down the hole. If I go too far advanced, and I've done this, if I go too far advanced, so maybe I'm igniting it down here, it builds up massive cylinder pressure. If it's not over top dead when I'm making massive cylinder pressure in there, I'm going to be trying to force this piston back down the way it came. That's going to cost me power. I need it to be at the perfect spot. And every engine's kind of different. Some engines have rule of thumb of where you want it to be, but then even the same kind of motor, you tune each one to exactly what it wants. Mr. Wellwood, yes? Doesn't a small block Chevy need 36 degrees of timing it before top dead center? Depends on the motor. My particular engine is running just a tick under 11:1 compression which is kind of above what you should be running with iron heads. And I'm nervous about going any higher than this. I have run higher, but so far it's running like this at 91 octane, so I'm rolling with it. Let's go back over here and look at this. Let's say I'm running at full throttle, and we got this thing going to nice big stack intake in there, and we've got our throttle absolutely full throttle. Let's say in a perfect world, this cylinder is as full as it possibly can. So all the air and fuel is coming into the engine, and this thing is going to be as densely packed with air and fuel as it possibly can. We're not hindering at all. We're getting as much in that cylinder as we possibly can. We're at full throttle, and we're revving the beans out of this thing. If those are fully dense and fully packed, combustion's probably going to happen pretty nicely in there, pretty reasonably. It's probably going to ignite quickly. Over here, where we live in the Okanagan, we tend to have forest fires. And a number of years ago, there was an area in Kettle Valley that had lots of trees, and we have all these trees, and everybody's houses are in the trees. It's a very nice, wonderful neighborhood. Problem is, with all these trees densely close together, all it takes is a lightning strike, and we got one fire, which spreads to the next tree, which spreads to the next tree, which spreads to the next tree, and then your entire neighborhood burns to the ground, and you got to get a new house built. Cool. Except you lost all those pictures of your grade 6 birthday party. Because the trees are really close together, it spreads like wildfire. So in here, if I ignite this one, it's going to ignite that one, which is right next to this one. And eventually it'll spread all the way through combustion, and it'll do so fairly quickly. If you've done modifications to your motor that fill this cylinder better, you might need less timing. If the design of the engine is such that combustion can work in there really quickly, good combustion chamber design, you might need a little bit less timing. Now, let's look at this another way. Maybe you're cruising on the highway and we don't have the throttle open very full. Would you agree with this piston coming down the hole like this for the intake stroke? This piston is drawing against that throttle plate. We're going to have a high amount of vacuum and not much air is going to be coming through here to fill the cylinder. Does that seem reasonable to you? Yes. 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 I was wondering if you were sleeping there. Good. So if the piston is pulling here and it's got a lot of vacuum, would you agree that inside the combustion chamber, we're not going to have as much... Oh, I just blew the rod again. My goodness. Must be moving on to Volkswagen now. We're not going to have a densely populated air and fuel amount inside the cylinder. It's going to be fairly sparse. Which means when we have our forest fire, now we don't have as many pieces of fuel to burn. So if this tree catches fire, it's going to take a while for it to burn hot enough, long enough, until the fire gets to this tree. Then that one has to burn until it gets hot enough, until it lights this tree. So it's actually going to take a longer time for the air and fuel to burn in here. This guy would ignite, and then this one gets close and it ignites, and then this one and this one, it'll take a longer amount of time. If this is going to take a longer time for that fuel to all get burnt, for the flame to propagate, a phrase which here means move along, or have children, but in this case, move along. If it moves along slowly, it may end up chasing that piston down the hole. We're going to lose some power. So what we do for cruising in here, high vacuum, low throttle opening, we give it even more advance. And on my truck, I've got it set to be about another 15 degrees on top of that. So that would be 15, 35, 40, 50 degrees. So we'd ignite somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 degrees, not 500 degrees, that would be too much. So in cruise, more advance. For power, we gotta give it some advance for sure. This is gonna be our base timing. And if I'm cruising, I'm gonna be here. If I give it full throttle to pass that bus full of nuns, bloop, I lose all of the vacuum, I'm gonna be back to here. When I pass the bus full of nuns, there's a cop by the side of the road, I back off from the throttle, it goes back up to here. This part gives you fuel economy. Oh yeah, you want this. And what you want to do with your vehicle, if you can tune it, and most of us can't, if you have a tunable computer, you can cruise down the highway and just give it a little bit more until you feel it starting to cut power where the spark is happening too soon and it's trying to go against the movement of the piston. If you start to feel that, then you went too far, back it off a couple degrees. Let's say it stays here and you're at full throttle again. So you've got way too much timing. What happens is the fire is going to happen and combust way too soon. Everything is densely populated. It burns quickly. It tries to drive this thing back down the hole. One of the problems you can run into is this is still going to compress it. So we've got an expanding fire and a compressing piston at the same time. Holy carp, the pressures in here are going to spike. And if they spike huge, that pressure and that increase in heat and that spike inside there can cause fuel that hasn't burned yet to start to burn by itself. So now you've got like fire going this way, something maybe ignites. If we have firing start by itself, somewhere else going that way, so now you've got a piston going up, you got fire going this way, and now you got fire going that way. The pressure in here can be so huge that you could break your engine, you can damage the piston. You're going to hear this, kind of like tin can with rocks that someone's rattling around and you want to punch them in the esophagus. It's got this kind of rattly noise. In my ears, it sounds like a diesel. If your engine sounds like a diesel and it's not a diesel, you're killing your engine, you're destroying it. And this kind of stuff where the flames hit each other and you get a huge spike is called detonation. That's bad. And it's also sometimes called knock. It's also sometimes called ping because that's what it sounds like inside your engine. And this can actually blow holes through your pistons and wreck all kinds of stuff in your motor. You want to avoid this. On modern engines, they've got sensors that listen for this sound, the knocking and pinging, and they just start backing the timing off until it's happy again. If your car is designed to run at this kind of degree, and you put the cheap gas in it, and it senses knock and ping, it's going to start backing the timing off, which is going to cost you power, and it's going to cost you fuel economy. So if your car is designed for a premium gas, put a premium gas in it. I definitely run premium, oh my gosh. The balance you got to figure is the increased price of premium going to benefit me in fuel economy to justify it? I don't know, that's a math question. Ask your math teacher about that, I'm sure they'll love that. Interesting point. Some low compression gutless engines, they don't have a high compression ratio, so they're not really all that demanding. They run just fine on a low octane gas. The cheap 87 octane, that's fine. Those vehicles run great on it. If you put a premium fuel in an engine that doesn't need it, and the engine's running here, and you put that premium fuel in, when it ignites, that's going to burn a little bit slower. It's not going to like burning quite as quickly. You may notice less power if you put a premium fuel in a low octane fuel engine. Did I hit that all? This is going to be a short video. Subscribe so I can make it longer. Leave a comment below if this is overwhelming. Let's bring out the distributor that we used in ignition, part 1. On an old school Chevy, this is the advance that you use for power. Because it's done mechanically, it's called mechanical advance. And this gives you your spark timing that increases with speed. It works kind of like this. As this thing spins, it goes faster and faster and faster and faster, and these weights fling out like this. If you look inside here, I'm going to hold the bottom so the gears don't turn at all, so the entire shaft is fixed. When these weights fly out, the rubbing block for the points moves further and further, and it advances. This thing moves to open and close the points sooner and sooner and sooner and sooner. They have recurve kits to change how quickly and how far these weights move to change how much timing advance you can have in here. Comes in a kit kind of like this. This is really just all my junk. These are different weights, and I got a plethora of springs in here, and I've picked different ones. This is a very, very light spring. This is a medium weight spring. These are heavy springs. These are really stiff, so the weights spin out slower. These ones, a very soft spring, they're going to advance a lot faster, and it changes the curve of your spark advance. And then I have a little chart that I keep a record of what kind of advance did I get with all these different springs. And I'm currently running one medium, one light, and I'm running the factory weights that came in that distributor. This guy right here on the side, this is your vacuum advance. This thing hooks up to the plate that the breakers are connected to. When the engine gets high vacuum, this little link in here pulls the breaker switch, and the breaker switch moves further and further this way. This thing rotates in this direction, so if the switch moves closer and closer and closer, the points are going to open sooner and sooner and sooner. So on high vacuum cruise, this works. For speed, this works. When you're cruising down the highway at speed, they're both going to give you full mechanical advance and full vacuum advance. Full throttle, this shuts off, the breaker returns to where it needs to be, and we strictly go by mechanical advance. Mechanical advance for power, vacuum advance for economy. You want both. This electronic distributor has no advance mechanism in it at all. The computer gets the pulse from this, and the computer decides, oh, advance the timing. And it sends a signal back and it advances the timing. It just kind of makes it spark sooner or makes it spark later. That's all this does. It's all controlled by a computer, and nothing's really going on in here. You can't tune this, although you can if you're willing to hack the computer. So in the timeline of life, and I want to have maximum pressure here, and the piston has gone past top dead center, probably going to need to ignite the air and fuel here so that we can pass top dead center and build maximum pressure. Except the faster I go, the sooner I'm going to need to ignite it. So I'll have to ignite it at speed because I want to get some fuel economy out of this, and the throttle is pretty closed and the air and fuel is fairly spaced out. I'm totally spaced out, man. You might need to see a counselor. And take the sunglasses off. We think you're stoned if you're wearing sunglasses in class. This is when I need to ignite it before top dead center to still have maximum cylinder pressure at the right spot if I'm cruising. A factory tune is conservative. It just wants to be good enough to make decent enough power, decent enough fuel economy, so they'll sell it and it will make it through warranty so they don't have to buy you another engine. This is conservative. If you want to get a little bit more adventurous, if you want to get a little bit more living on the ragged edge, if you want to see who can in fact lean out the window the furthest, beyond here, at some point you're going to reach too much and you're going to reach death for your motor. Too much death. Apparently there's an acceptable level of death. In our local newspaper a couple of years ago, there was a big printout that the local RCMP had to let go of 2 of their officers because the crime level in our town had been reduced. Not eliminated, I'd like to point out, reduced. Apparently there's an acceptable level of crime and we don't want to get rid of enough of it. And I guess that makes sense, because if you got rid of crime completely, then, you know, pawn shops would go out of business, insurance companies would go out of business, cops would have nothing to do. So I guess you gotta have a certain amount of, what if it's like that Sim City thing? Or do you have to balance the right amount of crime with the right, it's like, in my totalitarian utopian world, things will be different. I can't promise better, but I can guarantee you elect me into power, I'll make them different. Right, back to this. If you're willing to get closer and closer to the edge of death, you can make the most power out of your motor and get better fuel economy. However, if something goes wrong, you get a bad tank of gas, you didn't tune it quite right, something goes weird and you start to get that knock or ping, then you enter the death zone and you're going to kill your motor. It all kind of depends how lucky you are. Do you feel lucky, punk? Well, do you? Cool story, bro. A while back, I changed from a newer style fuel injection computer to a slightly older style fuel injection computer. Same company, same connections and everything, and the thing ran like crap. It was garbage. It had no power. I was getting garbage fuel economy, and when I was trying to tune it and figuring what's going on, I would change the fueling and I couldn't get it to work, and it was gutless and horrible. And I knew what this vehicle should drive like, and I did all my tuning at night.
because at night, you know, people don't really see you. It's hard for people to call the cops on you. And I'm not that I don't speed, but I was, you know, getting up to full throttle, top of the red line in first and second gear just to tune it out. And every so often, there would be bang! Fire would come out the exhaust. The whole ditch would light up and poo would come out of my bum. And it took a while for me to figure out what the heck is going on with this car. And the other thing is, you look down here. No more. Look down. That's the muffler. That's the tailpipe right there. In winter, I can put my hand on the muffler and keep my arms warm because this is the exhaust right there. Freaking loud. Right by your ear. Oh my gosh. Bam! And eventually, I figured out what the problem was. There was a wire that went to the ignition module to tell the ignition module to advance the timing. But that wire had been moved on the electrical connection between the two generations of computers, and I didn't know that. So the ignition module was going, we're not receiving a signal from the computer. 10 degrees, this will get them home. It'll be gutless, it'll get bad fuel economy, but we'll give them 10 degrees. And so I got 10 degrees of advance at full throttle, at idle, at cruise, everywhere it was 10 degrees, nothing but 10 degrees, which idle, that's fine. If you take a look at my computer here, I have this thing set up to be about 12 degrees at idle, which is a nice amount of spark timing at idle. Everywhere else, it's not 10 degrees. So when I'm up here and I want to have 32 degrees or 36 degrees, and the ignition module is only giving me 10 degrees, at these speeds, fire is chasing the piston down the hole, and the fire is chasing the exiting air and fuel that should have been burned. So air and fuel is going out the exhaust, which would sometimes ignite. And then I get combustion in the muffler. Wow, oh my gosh. When I found that issue and I changed the wires, now the engine was everything I remembered it to be. It was amazing. So this is my spark table. You've seen the similar table when we looked at fuel systems and we looked at fuel. This is spark, idle. I don't have any really good idle speed control on this engine. So instead I fake it by adding a whole bunch more timing if it drops below idle speed. I want it to idle about 800. If it drops below that, the spark advance increases, which increases the idle speed and brings the idle back into here. Once I get moving, I start ramping in some more spark timing, and I tootle around town at about 3,000 RPM, 2,500 to 3,000, and on the highway, I'm usually 4,000 RPM. So this is the spark timing that I have. Cruising on the highway is about here, and full throttle's there. So you notice I'm dropping some timing out of it at full throttle. This engine seems to be happy at 32 degrees. I've tried some variations, but that's what I have. Nice thing is I can change it.